was meant to be moving overseas for love. It was a star-crossed reunion of first love that was consuming and intoxicating in only the way that a heart's desire can be. But on April 6, 2012, the day that I was originally meant to be boarding a jet plane to start my new life away from everything that I knew, loved, and had worked for, my relationship ended. I emerged from what was meant to be my temporary accommodation at my parents' house at 6:30 a.m. It was a beautiful Sunshine Coast day with a bright blue sky, dotted clouds that I could barely see through my puffy and bloodshot eyes. Now, walking out onto the balcony, another wave of sobs took hold. You know the kind of crying that squeezes your chest and your heart like a boa constrictor and strangles your throat so that almost all talking is impossible? It was that kind of crying. Now, I remember my mum coming over to give me a hug, and I said to her, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. But looking up at that sky, I also said, but I can't help but think what a great twist this would be if it was a script. Now, the funny thing is, it turns out that's exactly what it was. Now, as a writer and a producer, I constantly have to try and balance the heart-focused creative writer side with the cerebral control freak producer side. And this, for me, is a constant battle. Now, when my first love and I reconnected, on paper, my life was pretty much perfect. I had the job as a head of development for a film and television production company. I was renting an apartment here in Brisbane that was really nice by myself, and I had a clear career path. But I wasn't happy. I was lying to myself every single day with the mantra, it'll be fine. You see, for the better part of 3 years, I've been repressing a lot of feelings about my life because I was convincing myself that everything was going to and had to go to plan. And when my heart started to say, hey, Emma, I think we might have a little bit of a problem, shut it away in a cupboard so that my head was in control. You see, I thought that if I tried hard enough to make things work, that they would. But what ended up happening was I became so emotionally, mentally, and physically drained because I was putting all of that energy into the parts of my life that were just not working out. I was in such denial because my plan was going to work and it had to work, that I became someone who never went anywhere, didn't see my friends and family, didn't meet new people, didn't have new experiences, and most of all, didn't want to work on the things that I loved, which were my own creative projects. What I was actually doing was putting a whole lot of band-aids on what was fast becoming a fundamentally bad approach to my life. Now, the funny thing is about trying to make a plan work, or trying to make something in your life work when you know deep down that it just isn't going to, is that you start to forget why you had that plan in the first place. I started to forget why I wanted to be a writer and a producer, something that used to fill me with such immeasurable passion and joy. And I started to hate the things that I once loved. All the while, my heart was screaming at me from a cupboard that I'd put it in, Emma, what are you doing? But my head would quickly say, shut up, I'm too busy. Because that's what I was. I was always too busy. So when my first love and I reconnected, that's when everything started to change. I remember the first time we'd spoken on Skype after not having seen each other's faces for 2 years. And as soon as I saw him, I knew that I was in real trouble. So a few months later, I flew to visit him, and naturally, emotional and other fireworks ensued. But then, all of a sudden, I was right back at home, in the life that I had convinced myself was everything that I wanted, with the cold, face-slapping awareness that it wasn't. I saw the bundle of band-aids that I created for what it was. Something that I couldn't fix, and something that I realized I didn't want to fix. So, at this point, I did what any rational person would do. Swore undying love and made plans to move to the other side of the world, away from everything I knew. Now, at this point, my head is freaking out because I've gone way too far the other way. I'm listening just to my heart. But I guess that's the inherent problem with having a head and a heart, is that it's always going to be a battle, and I don't know if there is any solution. But when I'd made those plans, I realized just how long I'd been lying to myself for about my life, and it really scared me. So what I did was I made a promise to him, but more importantly to myself, that if everything all fell apart, that I would be 100% responsible for rebuilding my life. And now at this part in the story, we arrive back at the balcony, and I'm in tears. What I'd done was I had applied for the wrong visa without doing enough research, which wasn't like me, and I'd consequently been barred from entering the country that I was planning on moving to. Now, I'd done so much research after that point to try and find a solution, to try and find a way around the problem, but there was no immediate fix. But I realized, hold on, I can go anywhere. I can just go anywhere except for where he is. He has a portable job. We can go somewhere else for a little while until we can figure it out and be together. But unfortunately for him, it was all a bit too complicated and all a bit too much. So I sat on Skype that morning saying that I could not wait for a solution to magically appear, but I could go anywhere to be with him. But unfortunately, it was all too hard. He didn't fight for me, and it fell apart. Now, it's really difficult to deal with loving someone so much when they don't love you enough to fight for you. It makes you question your own self-worth. So later that day, after a lot of crying, I did what most women do, shut myself away in a room and watch my favourite film. But for me, it's not Love Actually or Bridget Jones' Diary, it's Lord of the Rings, but that's a totally other story. Now, the next few weeks were really hard. I'd go from sobbing uncontrollably to feeling surprisingly really awesome. But then my head would say to me, hold on, aren't you meant to be heartbroken? And then I'd start to feel bad because I was feeling so good. But the thing that I realized about being heartbroken is that it's when you are heartbroken, it's really hard to lie to yourself and control how you feel, at least for me. I tried, but it would always come back up because of a Regina Spektor song, a Pixar film, because of a shirt I was wearing when we were together. I realized that there is no way that I could have, with my head or my heart, planned for heartbreak. And I realized that there was no way I could really keep lying to myself. So as time went on, I started to feel really good because I think that I realized that my heart knew deep down that it was always going to be okay because I'd started to be honest with myself again. And the whole process was really quite cathartic in many ways. But I guess at this stage that you're probably expecting me to say that my head had done that. I told you so, dance, a few times. But in actual fact, it hadn't. Because my head had started to realize that maybe my heart knew a little bit of what it was talking about. Because even though that one part of my life that had to work out didn't, everything else started to. All of the opportunities that I'd been blinded to when I was lying to myself because I was always too busy and I had to make my concrete life plan work, all of those things that I was blinded to started to come into my life in the most amazing ways. I'd like to share with you some of the things I've done since the heartbreak in April. Early next year, I'm going to be a published author of some fantastic kids' books called Mirabella the Mermaid Detective that I'm writing with my writing partner, best friend, and mum, Margot, who's here later today. I can't look at her because I'll cry. But we'd been working on these for a while, but when I was really closed emotionally, I was not the writing and creative partner that I always should have been. And in a strange way, that heartbreak allowed me to be that person that I should have been. I also met my other best friend and our business partner, Jonathan Duffy, who's speaking here later today. And we're making a film about marriage equality called The Doctor's Wife 2. an issue that I believe is incredibly important. I have started my own business. I have more than a lifetime worth of plans of travel and adventure. And I'm here today with all of you. How awesome is that? So strangely, as a result of all of this emotional turmoil, I'm living the life that I've always dreamt about. But it's not always a smooth ride. Even the process of writing this speech has been really intense, despite my head's newfound respect for my heart. Now, I don't know how many times I've cried during the writing of this speech. I think I've been able to read it 3 times without crying, because I've had to truly come to terms with not the fact that my relationship failed, but that because I had not been listening to my heart for so long, that I was essentially living a lie. I was lying to the one person that I believe we should never, ever, ever lie to, myself. You see, when we lie to ourselves, not only are we in denial, but we're inadvertently lying to every single other person in our lives, particularly when we preach honesty as a beacon of a good relationship. And we are always lying to, when we're lying to ourselves, those people that love and care about us the most, and that we love and care about the most. Now, like most women, I'm awesome at giving advice, but horrible at taking it. But if there's one thing that I can say today that I hope that you can take away and listen and hear, and I do as well, is that I really believe that nothing good can ever come from lying to ourselves. Now, when I was doing my research for this speech, I was lucky enough to come across a quote or a paragraph from the amazing Seth Godin, who is a marketing guru, author, and status quo challenger. And it sucker punched me in the chest with such awareness. Because what I realized with that quote was that it has only ever been my head's interpretation of what I think everyone else thinks I should be that has ever told me that I'm not good enough. That's the only thing. And it's called, how long are you going to wait? They told you to get your resume in order, to punch your ticket and to fit in, and to follow instructions. They told you to swallow your pride and not follow your dream. They promised you trinkets and prizes and possibly riches if you would just suck it up and be part of the system. If you would merely do what you were told and conform. They sold you debt and self-storage and reality TV shows. They sold your daughters and your sons too. All in exchange for what would happen later when it was your turn. It's your turn. Being heartbroken has allowed me to be my true self again because I am, for the first time in far too long, I'm honest with myself. Now, our hearts are things that are often relegated to being put on the sidelines and only being brought out when we're really emotional or comfortable, but they're with us every step of the way, and I believe are a fundamental part of our success in life. Now, whether you call it your gut instinct, your intuition, your sixth sense, your women's intuition, that feeling that you get when you know that something is really, really right or really, really wrong is just as important in business, innovation, and your careers as it is in love and relationships. Now, when we listen to both our heads and our hearts, marrying them with equal respect and recognition, it's really hard to lie to ourselves. Now, the truth is not always fun. Most of the time, it's really painful. But I believe being honest with ourselves is the only way that we will ever create, empower, inspire, innovate, and achieve the greatness that our world so desperately needs. Thank you.